There's something about this place that's just, it's like the center of the universe to us. There's remnants of the fire. One night, there was an emergency, and a lot of people kind of gathered down in the community. They had shared with everybody just to be aware that might have to evacuate. Water, trees, rocks, even cows were swept away in this torrential downpour.
The radio came on, and one of the gentlemen that was on that heavy equipment crew started saying, "Mayday, Mayday, we're stuck in the middle of a flood." He goes, "I've lost my machine. 2 of the guys I were with just floated off. I don't know where they're at, and I'm hanging onto this little tree, and there's giant boulders floating by me." And he goes, "What do I do? What do I do?"
The lights in the sky tell the story of a tribal people that listened to the voice of the earth. The fires on the land tell the story of a humankind that got lost and forgot what was sacred. Mother Water brings her message. Wake up and remember your birthright belonging to the earth.
This is the story of the Santa Clara Creek Watershed, a 23-mile stream that flows from the Jemez Mountains in northern New Mexico to the confluence of the Rio Grande. It serves as a primary water source, cultural identity, and spiritual sanctuary to the Pueblo of Santa Clara. Since 1998, 3 devastating wildfires have impacted the Santa Clara Creek. The largest was the Last Conscious Fire that began in June 2011. It was the largest wildfire in New Mexico history at the time, and the speed of the fire's spread was astonishing, eventually burning 16,000 acres of Santa Clara Creek forests, with 60% of these acres experiencing high-severity fire. While fire has always been integral to these ecosystems, national fire suppression efforts over the past 100 years have overcrowded forests and created conditions ripe for severe wildfire. With the slopes of Santa Clara Canyon left largely denuded from the fire, exposed volcanic sedimentary soils gave way to large-scale catastrophic flooding and debris flows during the monsoon seasons thereafter. The floods resulted in a 100% fish kill, breached 4 dams, severely damaged roadways, recreation sites, and natural areas. Because of the safety issues posed by the post-fire conditions, the canyon had been closed and inaccessible to the Santa Clara people for 10 years and remains closed to the public. In this story, Santa Clara Pueblo teaches us how they have interweaved traditional ecological knowledge along with Western science to restore Santa Clara Creek, creating a new paradigm for post-fire restoration.
And if you don't stop sleeping, if you don't come home soon, then there is not long left now.
Well, my name is Michael Chavarria. I serve as the governor for Santa Clara Pueblo here in New Mexico. So our land is considered a traditional cultural property. It's a spiritual sanctuary. It's an outdoor cathedral. It's a place of worship. Back in 2011, we had the Las Conchas fire, and so we lost 80% of the forested canyon and 50% of the watershed that was impacted. So you suppress the fire, but after the fire, you get the monsoon rains in July, August, September, which devastated, again, the Santa Clara Creek watershed in general. We had Rio Grande cutthroat trout, but then because of the flooding, we had 100% fish kill. So we have no more fish now. Today we're here at our ancestral homeland of Puye Cliffs, learning from them. Our history is not written, it's all oral. And so that's what's very important, that we understand the connection to place. But unfortunately, the fire and then the floods have sort of disconnected our children from learning their cultural identity, having that connection of growing up, camping, fishing, hunting, going on spiritual journeys. Because now we have about a 10 to 12-year gap of the children not being able to come back into the mountains because it was unsafe. And so you can replace a tree Well, you can't replace a human being. Now that it's open, to come back and teach them again, because that strengthens their inner being, who they really are as Santa Clara people. And that's where you can get grandpa, grandma, the elders out here with the children to then teach them the language, but show them the flowers, the plants, the herbs, the medicines. For someday they're going to be in our position and as stewards of our land. We lost a lot of elders that remembered the place when it was forested. They wanted to come back, but unfortunately the Creator called them home. And I cried when the fires and floods happened, but I worked here, so I had to be here. And so that was like trauma, right? Historical trauma, reliving that trauma all over again.
She said, my dear child, do not worry about me. I recover quickly with the song of the birds and the love of the trees. With prayers moving around the earth, I regain balance with your tears. So remember your songs, do not focus your energy on saving me.
I remember that year quite well, 2011. One day we just looked over the hill and saw a big plume of smoke coming out of here. I remember when it came down into the canyon, the crew being from Santa Clara, the emotion that we felt when we got up here, almost to the point where we were in tears. The devastation that we saw was almost unbearable. Being a project manager and looking at that, I can remember thinking to myself, well, what are we gonna do? We kind of transitioned over and started doing some of the burned area restoration work. We were prepping these 4 ponds. At that time, Governor Chavarria, he was the forestry director, and he came up and me and him were talking there. And I had this little radio that I was listening to. The warning system went off on it. And we both looked up back here in these hills. The clouds were really dark. We had heavy equipment that was up here working. Mr. Chavarria had told me, well, why don't you get those guys down? I don't want them to get stuck in this storm. The emergency thing's going off, so let's get them out of there. So I got on the radio, made contact with them, and I told them, you guys need to come down, ASAP. At that point, it started raining. I was in front driving with now Governor Chavarria. I was about to drive up the road and I stopped. I told him, I don't think we're gonna make it any further.
My name is John Naranjo. I am of Santa Clara Pueblo. When our people migrated from Puye down into the valley, they also utilized this area as their hunting grounds to gather medicine. But it's home. If anyone goes on vacation, they eventually come back home.
Right when I said that and we stopped, a wall of water came out of that canyon.
We have some bridges down in our community. You could just hear the rocks smashing up against it. You could hear this big thump, boom, boom. Waves just so massive. It reminded me of the design that is signature to Santa Clara Pueblo, which is the Avanu, the water serpent, and how its curvatures and its body makes.
At that point, we all started panicking. We backed up straight to the hill. All of us ran up the hill. Governor Chavarria at that time had his camera on, and he was still kind of videotaping because we were kind of still like in shock. We managed to make it up the hill, but we didn't know how the heavy equipment folks were doing because we didn't have contact with them other than radio contact. I told them, stay there, stay put, just stay on that little tree. He goes, well, what do? I can't see these people. I need to go find them. And I told him, do not move. At that point, he said, I need a helicopter. I need you to call me a helicopter and get us out. From there, it was just spectacular to see some of the damage from all the water coming down. I mean, to me, it was phenomenal. Something I'd never seen before. Actual trees that were standing up, and they were actually still standing and moving. And as soon as they would hit the pond, then they would fall over. And these weren't little trees. These were big 50-foot trees. Governor Dashno was really worried about the folks at that point, and he goes, we got to get them. We got to get up there. And I told him, sir, we can't. It's just too dangerous. There was nobody staffing the radio. We couldn't get anybody. Just by chance, we were calling out, and one of the volunteer firefighters caught us. The governor told him, I want you to drop everything right now, and I want you to call a helicopter to come rescue these guys. And they did. They were all extracted, and they got them out safely, and they finally landed them. It was a very scary time. It was a life-changing moment, I can honestly say. Soon after the fire and after the flood, you come to that point where it almost seems hopeless. If you looked at the jumbled mess, it was like, okay, where do we start? We start with one branch at a time. And that's exactly what we did. Started cutting up everything, moving it hand by hand. Governor Chavarria came up and he looked and he goes, what are you doing? I told him, what you told me to do? You told me to remove this stuff. And that's exactly what I'm doing. He was like, you need heavy equipment. I said, I understand that, but I don't have heavy equipment. All I have are 20 guys, a piece of rope, and some fire equipment. And I said, that's where I gotta start. And we started realizing at that point, well, what do we need? How do we get it? How do we obtain it? Looking at short-term goals, mid-term goals, and long-term goals. Putting the pieces of the puzzle together. Mr. Chavarria, the director at that time, started bringing those resources together, the other agencies developing that plan. And that was very critical at that point because I was also a part of those meetings. I was also meeting with the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the engineers, in Corps of Engineers, and they started realizing, they're asking me as a project manager, what do you need? What type of resources do you need? And I said, no, number one, I need heavy equipment resources. Then we can start looking at salvage logging and how can we save some of this wood? Well, how can we also utilize some of that wood to start putting in some structures? Being indigenous to the area and knowing that's how our people maintain themselves was tying in those resources that we have here rather than putting a big thing of cement out there that's unnatural to the area.
Listen, 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 and learn. Bring the change to your hearts first.
Hi, I'm Garrett Altman. I'm with the Environmental Policy Innovation Center, or EPIC. I serve as the Western Restoration Program Manager. Formerly, I was with the Santa Clara Forestry Department, and that's what brings us here today. We're in the upper Santa Clara Creek Watershed. The tribe worked on a multi-agency collaborative approach to implement a physically top-down approach to the watershed. What we really tried to do in a unique or more appropriate manner is to work with the natural processes, recognize where they're occurring, how we can emulate them, facilitate them, and replicate them. That really comes back to nature-based solutions and working with nature, partnering with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and their Engineering with Nature program, and then also integrating indigenous traditional ecological knowledge, or indigenous knowledge as we refer to it more commonly now. And that really is working in harmony with the landscape, limiting the introduction of foreign materials such as concrete, maximizing the use of available materials such as the woody debris and post-fire materials we have. How can we tie in our new infrastructure to adapt to the system rather than making the creek and the stream system adapt to the roads and the bridges? We love to work with our natural materials, our woody debris, our abundant rocks and fill material, which we're blessed to have here in this watershed. We don't have to import anything, but we still have to work and negotiate with our engineers and our contractors that no, we don't want traditional riprap imported. No, we don't want a concrete arch type structure. We want to use stacked stone. We want to highlight these materials. It's really important. It's really in line with the cultural wishes of the Pueblo. They really want us to prioritize those natural materials and being in harmony with the land and optimizing that indigenous knowledge that has sustained these areas for millennia.
Using that traditional ecological knowledge, it is now termed nature-based solutions, engineering with nature. These are very important things that our people at Puyi have done over the years. So now in 2023, we're utilizing those same concepts to put back on the ground. which is very important. But also going back to speaking with your elders, because they're going to give you that knowledge of what you need to do on the landscape. And it's our job to now work with the federal partners, the state partners, the non-governmental organizations, the philanthropic community, to then implement these work on your land. It's your land, so it's up to you to determine the outcome of that. And having that respect for one another. That's what our elders always tell us, is respect each other, but don't be scared, you know. You already have that knowledge within the heart, your mind, and your soul. So it's a matter of what Grandpa and Grandma have taught you. Now it's our turn to reiterate those same lessons back to our partners, which is very important. Just do the best you can and let you take the lead. You're the leader, and let them follow. The contractors and agencies will come and go, but we have to live with what's being implemented.
All of us ancestors, soil, water, plant and animals are calling you humans to us so we can save you.
Hello, I'm Chris Herring with the Army Corps of Engineers, Engineering Research and Development Center. The wildfire occurred back in 2011, and the Pueblo has been actively working to restabilize the watershed since then. So 11, 12, 13 years of work have gone into the work that they've done to this point. They're doing a lot of interesting practices, many which incorporate traditional ecological knowledge. What that is using in situ materials and some of the traditional Pueblo knowledge in materials to stabilize some of these steep slopes, rocks and some of the logs, and doing some contour mulching and some other practices. One of the main questions we have, is why not bring in heavy equipment to do this? With the Corps of Engineers, we have an initiative called Engineering with Nature. The engineering group or community is trying to work more naturally with nature to provide more sustainable and resilient designs that can withstand potentially climate variability and future engineering challenges. And so it's been a big push within the Corps of Engineers to try to establish and maintain and do more collaborative work to document these practices. Some of the other practices within the Pueblo, the canyon here, Santa Clara Canyon, are side channel ponds, root wads, some other wood structures. We've got a really big tool set within the EWN community, and we're trying to document and develop that tool set. There's a lot that larger organizations like the Corps of Engineers can learn from the local groups.
FEMA, the Army Corps of Engineers, the NRCS, and the U.S. Forest Service, and numerous partners who came to the table and offered their expertise. It really became a collaborative effort. We relied on the National Disaster Recovery Framework that was developed in response to Hurricane Katrina. We applied that here, and that brought all the partners to the table, identified the roles and responsibilities, and who was going to do what. The Army Corps was able to put in enormous flood mitigation and flood attenuation devices. The bear and bar teams were able to provide us with recommendations for sediment stabilization. Our numerous NGO partners from the Nature Conservancy, the Audubon Society, intertribal partners such as the San Manuel Band of Mission Indians and the Shakopee Mendewakan out of California and Minnesota were both instrumental in providing cost match and helping the tribe navigate these financial barriers that came with a lot of these projects. And the tribe continues to advocate for cost match waivers for all tribal nations. I truly believe that tribes shouldn't be subject to that burden, especially in a post-disaster environment. We're trying to increase tribal sovereignty and natural resources management. They're the original stewards of the land. There's a lot to learn and a lot to be respected and admired, and a lot that the tribes are sharing. Santa Clara has learned so much over the last 10 years that now we're in a position where we can give back and teach through our lessons and what we learned, what worked, what didn't work. You also have to wait to do nice restoration work, sometimes in our case a decade.
Oh, sacred beauty. Oh, sacred beauty.
Hi, I'm I'm John Wakanda. I'm from the Pueblo of Santa in New Mexico. I work for the Nature Conservancy in New Mexico as the Indigenous Partnerships Program Director. Santa Clara is a special place. Its recovery is important to know that it still is alive. This is a way for us to helpfully understand the power of nature and be able to heal from devastating events, to recognize that there is life that still continues, the things that still function, the animals that are still here, the beauty that is still present. Is just an evolutionary cycle in our environment. It's hard for us to understand that. Not one person, not one single community can do that alone. It's coming together. This tragedy has been, in some aspects, a blessing to allow people to come together and work closer together, and being able to connect in better, stronger relationships, create partnerships, allow the tribe to recognize and realize that they're not alone, that they have partners that they can rely on, that there are sources of funding that they weren't aware of before, that now have come together, and it's all helping. And we can do that in other places. We need to do that in other places, come together.
Open your heart to what love truly is.
It's an honor to be working here as a non-tribal member and to provide my outside experience and perspectives. They really appreciate that, and I've earned my respect over the year from the tribe to really work in line with their cultural belief system and have the tribe now emerge as a leader nationally in nature-based solutions. As we see behind us here, we have an off-channel pond that could be referred to as a beaver dam analog. This will be a great site for beaver to come in and be reintroduced to this site. We also had 100% beaver kill in the watershed. They can bring this water table up and have a really nice feature here hydrologically, ecologically. Examples of hand-built structures here. These are just simple one-rock dams. You can see this is already aggregated and filled in with sediment above it. Usually you want a minimum of 5 rows if you can. Stabilize it with big footer rocks on the bottom. What we're trying to do is keep that sediment from flowing into the creek. Here we have a much larger incision and head cut. We've stabilized this head cut using a series of log mattresses in a step down formation. We'll fill in this with root wads and sediment and backfill it. Those root wads adds that scaffolding for that material to adhere to and becomes very resilient and stable. We'll supplement with planting, with grass plugs, or just shaking seed during opportune seasons. A lot of the work we do is very simple and low tech and process based. Again, you're working with nature to sustain it for the long term. Here behind me, we have an alluvial fan deposition. This is one of our reference reaches in Upper Santa Clara Canyon. This is an area where we have not implemented any treatments, nor do we plan to. We've implemented nearly 8,000 hand-built structures in the tributaries, over 53 tributaries to be exact. And it's also important though that we don't treat everything. We need to let nature run its course and see what it can teach us, and then how we can learn from that and apply those concepts elsewhere. Trying to work with the system and let it teach us rather than try and manipulate it.
You were loved all along, always have been and forever shall be, by all of us who you think that you are saving.
My role as the Indigenous Partnerships Program Director for the Nature Conservancy, it's a new position for our organization to be able to develop stronger and deeper relationships with our tribes. We have a network, we have a directory, whether it's focused on wildlife, forestry, grasses, invasive species. There are specialists in each of these disciplines that come together, that can come together. That is a shared value, not just among tribal people, but all people of all types. We come to each other's assistance when we need to, and partnerships is a way of doing that.
But it's all of us coming together to put down plans and principles and outline a strategy that's going to be successful for all of us. May it be on reservation land, public lands, Forest Service land, state land, to help Mother Nature heal herself. She's going to heal herself, but in the meantime, we got to put work. So just having that respect for one another is very important.
You were loved all along, always have been and forever shall be, by all of us who think that you are safe.
there may be certain situations where we have to use harder, more engineering design because of the constraints we have of the site. But where we can, we need to be pushing more towards more greener, more natural and nature-based features. That is really what the ecological services and systems need. One of the main things that I've learned is just the resilience of the Pueblo and the persistence of trying to make sure that we get all these groups together, and the ability to exchange ideas and methods and practices is very important, not only for the Corps of Engineers to be learning, but our partners. There's been reach out from other areas around the country for this type of applications and newer thinkings for engineering designs using engineering with nature.
Wake up, come home, remember in your bones that you belong to life.
The mountains, the forest recover. This is part of its regeneration cycle. It's helpful to understand that it also grows, it also heals, it's living. Fire is part of nature. We cannot dominate it. We have to live with it. We have to accept it. There are many aspects of conservation that tribes have been practicing traditionally that now have become recognized as being very valuable to the science of conservation. Our organization is beginning to learn and understand how to utilize that, how to protect it, how to share it among other partners. The best way we can do that is through having Indigenous people within our organization, and I'm honored to be part of that. If I can be of help to our tribal communities, that's my purpose.
Wake up, come home, remember in your bones that you belong to life.
I've learned a lot. I've never worked in a watershed with so much potential. There's a new era of succession here that is a natural process on the scale of millennia, but there's hope for rejuvenation and renewal. You see the aspen regeneration behind us. You know, those are going to propagate for 60 to 80 years and be replaced with conifers. But then on the opposite side of the valley, we have immense ponderosa regeneration. There's a lot, and it's nice. What I've learned is that you can really leverage what nature is doing and not have to come in and reinvent or over-engineer. Work with what's going on, and it comes together rather easily. Nature's resilient. You provide the conditions, you can really optimize and enhance these features to what I believe a more ecologically productive and vibrant state than was here before the fires. It's emotionally impactful for the older generation who grew up seeing these areas and knowing this as a continuous forest, and to see it now, it is devastation for them. People, you know, breaking down in tears, thinking just everything is just so different. But they also see signs of hope, and they see what we're doing on a daily basis. They see all the partners that come in and try and learn from it. They see how the tribe's being recognized nationally as a leader in post-fire restoration and what can be learned from us. And it gives them a sign that they are a resilient people and a resilient community, and that, you know, maybe we can have new water features up here that don't require $30 million dams, and that we can work with beavers, and we can work with off-channel ponds, and we can work with nature-based solutions to try and work more with the system and try and maximize that system to the benefit of the people and also our downstream users on the Rio Grande corridor.
I would have never expected at one point in my life that I would be director up here of forestry, because I can remember my childhood, you know, growing up in this area, coming up here and actually thinking about that. I can remember riding in my grandfather's old El Camino in the back with my brother and my sister, and I had asked my brother, I said, you know, what would happen if this place started on fire? And, you know, what would we do? And my brother looked at me and he said, don't be stupid. They got people up here that put fires out. You know, to me, I look back at that and I was like, why would I even ask that question? I think this place kind of grew on me at that point. I'm blessed to be a part of putting this back, and how we actually got to this point, you know, is amazing to me, and definitely a story that should be told and shared with other folks.
Wake up, come home, remember in your bones that you belong to life.
So the priority for us is to teach our children because the children are going to take our place. Without that language, how are they going to sing their songs? How are they going to say their prayers? So that's what's very important, because it goes back to land, it goes back to the environment, it goes back to our ways of life, which is very important.
Wake up, come home, remember in your bones that you belong to life.
This is where our songs are. You can kind of see how the people are almost as rare as the rare flowering plants that are up here. We might lose not only this forest, but a whole culture and a way of life. That's why it makes it more worthwhile, I think, to do what we do up here. The importance of us taking the time to work with our partners to fuse that science with that knowledge.
Wake up, come home, remember in your bones that you belong to life. Wake up, come home, remember in your bones that you belong to life. Wake up, come home, remember in your bones that you belong to life. Wake up, come home, remember in your bones